all the exchanges had to close their accounts basically by December 31st. And that's why we have seen this large decline from 69 to 40,000 right now. That's what it is. So that's where the selling came from. Yeah, the first thing you should read is the Bitcoin white paper. And if you don't understand it, learn it. There's a lot of people who can explain it, search for it. You have to know what's written in the white paper. You have to understand the 3 technologies behind Bitcoin and why it's really breakthrough technology invention, what Satoshi did there. Why there is proof of work, why we use mining and what the hash, the SHA-256, how that all connects. You have to know every line in the Bitcoin white paper. And if you don't understand a thing, look it up, learn it, because it's essential. The white paper is only 9 pages, including the references, and it's so well written, so clear, so simple actually, that it's like a poem. I guess just allocate a small amount. Don't wait for the, like you said, don't wait till it comes down. Don't wait. Just put in a small amount to learn. And for one person, that's $1,000. For another, it's $1 million. But put in an amount that you can lose. But yeah, learn by doing. And Twitter. I was not on Twitter before Bitcoin. I think I opened the account in 2017, mainly at the end of 2017, mainly to express my opinion against that fork. That was the fork war. The first, well, it was a very large attack on Bitcoin. And if that would have succeeded, Bitcoin would be gone by now. If we look at last year of Bitcoin, it spends all the time between 40,000 and 60,000, around 50,000 if you will. Yeah. And so the average price of all the Bitcoins that are transacted, of all the investors when they get in, is getting higher and higher towards that 40 to 60K range. Yeah, it creates a new floor, especially.
Yeah. So look, year in review, 2021, what surprised you the most? And what do you think the biggest catalyst, there was a bunch, but what was the biggest catalyst for us not getting to 100,000 plus?
I guess the main event was China ban of mining. It scared all the miners out of China. China has always been had a dominant position in Bitcoin because of the mining, because half of the Bitcoin mining was there. It was always perceived as a risk, as a threat. So now they banned it. Yeah, so the actual threat and fear became reality. And yes, the hash rate went down 50%, and then it went up. It started to move up 2 months later to the new all-time high right now. And all the miners had moved their coins or their miners to Kazakhstan. Yeah, big issues. But most of the miners also went to the United States, of course, Texas and flare gas, etc. Because Kazakhstan, the turbulence we see there right now is not impacting the hash rate too much. But that was a big thing. And together with it, the price went down because all the miners, of course, gone and the hash rate gone, created a risk. Will it come back? Will China take over the hardware and 51% attack the network or something? And the miners, of course, had to relocate the hardware, and that cost money, so they had to sell all the Bitcoins they had, or some had to do that. Large selling. And so that was a major surprise, because that came for me at a bad moment, because that was exactly the moment that Bitcoin was rising to the stock to flow levels of 100,000, and then all of a sudden, bang, we're back at, where are we now? Well, 40 something. That was the biggest surprise to me. Lengthening cycles and diminishing returns. You look at the top, the market tops. You look only at the market tops, where I look at averages, right? I look at the regression line, the averages. So he looks at market tops. So lengthening cycles mean that the top is later every cycle. And right now, it seems like if this was the top, the 69, it was at the same location as 2017. So it's not really lengthening. If the top is not in and will be here in this year, for example, in the summer, then we have, according to that definition, lengthening cycles. And diminishing returns, same thing. So the tops tend to be relatively lower each cycle. So 2017 was lower, had a lower top than 2013. And now if 69 was the top, we had a lower top this time around. Of course, if we go higher...
This is my theory of contracting the CAGR, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not that much interested in the tops and the bottoms, because those are one-day events. I can't buy or sell large positions in a day. So I'm much more focused on the average plateau, where we, like the 50,000 of last year, you could have bought and sold a lot of money on those levels. Yeah, where the exact top is and where the exact bottom is, actually, I don't really care.
The rumor is that China, not only did they ban Bitcoin mining at all, they're going to start to potentially go go after individuals that they can see still have it, right? So if you have it on an exchange or they're aware that you have it, so they might start essentially locking people up.
What I hear from Chinese investors is that this is indeed true, and has been this ban of mining has been followed up by a ban of trading, actually. Not owning Bitcoin, but trading. So all the exchanges had to close their accounts basically by December 31st. And that's why we have seen this large decline from 69 to the 40,000 right now. I guess, and there's a lot of analysis. I retweeted some of that. I think it was Glassnode analysis that shows that and we know that. I mean, if you're all the selling last 2 months was done in Chinese working hours. That's what it is. So that's where the selling came from. You can see exchange balances, the number of Bitcoins on exchanges, and all the Chinese exchanges are close to zero right now. But we have seen them decline the balances over the last 2 months. Actually, it's good news, right? Because the December 31st is over, it's behind us. So the exchanges are empty, are done.
Well, before we jump, let's go into 22 and beyond. For me, it's the Fed. So what do you think the biggest risk is moving forward? For me, it's just interest rates, right? But what do you believe the biggest risk, or what are you most worried about maybe for 2022 and beyond for short-term price action?
I guess the most important events are the ones you don't see. So if you would have asked me this question end of 2019, I would have never foreseen COVID and the enormous impact that had on QE in the markets and Bitcoin. So I guess we're going to have another unknown, they call it a black swan event somewhere this year that will make...
You think it'll be this year? You think so? It's getting a little too rich for everybody's blood.
Well, one of the things I'm following, but don't read too much in that, but I find it interesting. It's on my radar. COVID was a scenario, of course, that was been written about before 2020. In that particular, so it feels a bit like you could see it as a drill, basically. And there were more scenarios written in those documents. And one of the scenarios is a computer virus. So we had the real virus and all the responses like lockdowns, etc. But a computer virus. And think about the small incidents that we've seen already in the oil pipes in America that were hacked, and then ransomware, and there's a Bitcoin component there as well. We've seen some of those incidents in Europe as well. They were less frequently published. But I see there was a big drill like a month ago, 2 months ago in Israel with 10 countries. US, of course, Israel, Netherlands, well, the usual suspects, where they sort of planned the whole event. And it might be a little bit of a tinfoil hat thing, but I'm watching those stories closely. And, well, it is very important as a Bitcoiner to think about this if you're into that kind of geopolitical stuff. But one of the reasons why governments and countries can engage, can do this saving of banks in 2008 or saving the economy after COVID is because they can print money. It's because they can debase our money, because they can create inflation and let us all pay for that. So governments can do their warfare and welfare, if you will, because of their ability to print money. What if they would not have that ability? We would have less warfare and less big-scale government programs. And maybe that's a political thing.
Forcible austerity.
Yeah. Whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I have some liberal friends that think it's a bad thing. So they're like, no, we need to print more money because we need all these types of services and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, but you don't realize the consequences. There's unintended consequences.
Well, actually, that's the big underlying debate right now between economists and Bitcoiners on the one hand, the libertarians and the Austrian economists, and the normal or Keynesian economists on the other side, and especially the governments, of course, and the central banks on the other side. For example, the ECB, the European Central Bank, doesn't view Bitcoin as money because their entire worldview is based on money has to be printable, has to be controllable, we have to be able to make more of it, otherwise the economy and the whole world is not functioning. That's their basic belief. But of course, the world worked well before 1971 as well, where we had all the currencies linked to gold. But of course, they removed that link because otherwise they had to stop the Vietnam War. I guess it's a very difficult thing for governments to not have that tool of money printing because they'll be much smaller as a government and in their ambition, and it would be much more markets that decide who goes busts. So I think it's a very fundamental discussion underlying that we're seeing played out in real life, which is the stuff that movies will be made of, like The Big Short. But it's very, very interesting to realize that as we're living it.